and then later we will open it up to questions and comments from our audience. I've got some questions already on these cards. There are more cards in that back corner of the room. If you have questions, if you have comments, go to the back of the room, fill one of these cards out. I will read them and facilitate. I think we are also going to open up this microphone at a certain point. If you don't want me to read the question, we can come up here to this corner and you can ask it personally to the panel. We are all here because we love Raleigh. Thousands of people move here every year because it is so highly regarded as a great place to live. But we can be honest, we also know that we've got our share of problems and that there is a better version of the capital city that we'd all like to achieve. A city with less gun violence, more trust and more respect between the community and its police force, and a more reliable safety net for our most vulnerable neighbors. So we want to get into all those points tonight. But first, let me say again, right from the top, we want this to be an open, safe, and respectful conversation. So I trust that that will happen as well, from me, from the panelists, and from you, the audience. Let's start with the gun violence panel. 49 homicides in the city of Raleigh in 2022. It's the highest single-year tally since the FBI started tracking those numbers. And Chief, you brought this up, the number of teenagers involved in these violent crimes involving a gun spiked to alarmingly high numbers last year. Seems to be continuing into this year. So Chief, let's start with you, and we want to define the problems. We want to create a baseline here on what we're talking about, what this problem with gun violence is. And you can take off as a jumping point this morning in Southeast Raleigh, just a few hundred feet away from Ligon Magnet Middle School, which you said was a man. I'm not sure how old he was. I'm not sure his name. But you said he had a gun. You said he was shooting at cars and your officers. Your officers returned fire. That man was shot and killed. Anthony, is the chief's mic up? She's going to define the problem.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, very good. And I'd like to start off by first thanking St. Mark's Episcopal Church for hosting this event, this very crucial conversation that we need to have. And thank you, Diana Powell, for Justice Serve. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you. And certainly what we saw this morning in our community was very tragic on all levels. Of course, it's an ongoing active investigation. I don't have a lot of information that I can talk to related to that. At this time, we don't believe that it was linked to the school, but it just goes to, again, emphasize the need for gun control to some extent because we're seeing so much gun violence in our community, particularly with our young people. And the individual this morning is a little bit older. It's not a juvenile, but in 2022, we saw repeated incidents in which our young people are carrying guns, they have access to guns, and they are firing those weapons indiscriminately in the public. I think we have an obligation to, one, look after our young people, educate them on the dangers of gun violence. Secondly, we have to talk with parents to figure out what is going on in homes and why do children have access to guns? Why do teenagers have access to guns? And then thirdly, I think we need to be very intentional about, as parents or anyone, guardians, of checking, of searching, of going in rooms. When we were raising our boys, I told them, I said, I got a search warrant to go in every single room in this house to see what you have in your room, what do you have in your bags, and then to report that information, because what we're just seeing, I think, is unacceptable, I think, in everybody's minds. And if we are not intentional as a society, this is going to continue. Every time there's a school shooting, as we saw in Nashville this morning, everybody's saying, we're tired of this, we're tired of this. But what are we doing definitively to make sure that weapons are not getting in the hands of our young people?
District Attorney Freeman, I want to turn to you next. I mean, that's the law side of it and law and order side of it, and I want to take it inside the Wake County Courthouse and how you define this problem.
Yeah, first, let me join the chief in just thanking people for being here this evening. Thank you, Joel, for taking your time to be here this evening, and thank you, Diana. It's always good to be able to collaborate with you and appreciate the church having us here. Yeah, we have been fortunate historically in Wake County to have a relatively low violent rate per capita. But as we have grown, especially over the last few years, and much like the rest of communities, large communities, coming out of the pandemic, we have seen a significant increase in gun crime in our community. And, when we are looking at, violent felonies that are coming into the court system and 10 to 15% growth in those numbers within a year, certainly homicides within Raleigh, and you've heard the chief speak eloquently about that before, but across Wake County at all-time highs the last 3 years. While we continue to be in a good position for a community our size, we have to get serious about what's happening here, about the proliferation of firearms in our community, the number of firearms that are showing up at our schools. And so, I think this is an approach that we, at least in the court system, have tried to, like we do with most things, attack on two fronts. And one is, we are going to do what we have to make sure that our community stays safe. And that means holding people accountable who are going to be violent offenders in our community. But we also have to look at what are the other options available, what are the other tools in the toolbox to try and reduce violence. And so, we are looking at a wide range of things, including programs such as the federal program Project Safe Neighborhoods, that really does bring together, trying to stand up opportunity for individuals, intervene early on to divert them away from patterns of violence. But when that doesn't work, making sure that people understand that our job is to keep our community safe. I think it's really important to put on the table early on in this discussion tonight that the violence in our community certainly is not limited to one area or another. But the reality is, though, the people who we serve in our office and seeking justice for them, the victims of violent crime, overwhelmingly are from communities of color. And so, we owe it to our community at large to do what we can to keep people safe and to give people opportunities that can divert them away from violent behavior.
We're going to open it up to questions, and everyone will have a chance to speak. But let's be respectful of the conversation here, because this will be an open conversation. I promise you that as the moderator. Let me turn. We're going to talk about accountability. Let's talk to Brother Divine and Quincy Goodman, who both are doing the work on a community level. Brother Divine, I wanted a chance to speak with you before, but I don't think we've met in person. A little bit about your backstory.
About my what? Come again?
Your backstory, who you are.
Well, as the conversation go on, more about myself will be revealed. But as of right now, I'm actually from the city of Raleigh. I grew up in Raleigh predominantly all of my life. I've been a victim of gun violence. I've been a victim of police terrorism. I've been, in the homeless shelters. So a lot of this that we're talking about, I actually have firsthand experience, not just word of mouth, about these things that we'll be talking about. And as far as this shooting that happened, I would like to send condolences to anybody that was affected, whether they were, whatever side they was on the trigger. It's still a tragedy, and I would be unintelligent to attempt to speak on something that is still an open investigation, and obviously the trained professionals don't even have enough information at this time, so I would like to decline the question. Thank you.
Quincy, you heard the police chief and you heard the DA and kind of define the problem of what gun violence is in Raleigh and really gun violence across America. As you see it, what is it?
Well, as I said, they talking locally, I'm talking abroad. It's systematic. Everything starts at the top. So I tell people all the time, when you talk about crime in our neighborhoods and stuff like that, you got to think about the systematic aspect of the situation. You know what I'm saying? I use the example all the time. When you get these kids, they get these vouchers for apartments and stuff like that. What do you house them at? You house them all together. You don't house them in West Raleigh. You don't house them in Cary. You don't house them in Broad Creek, Brentwood. You house them in Raleigh North. You house them in Halifax. So when you're housing all of these people, it's like being in a cage. What do you think gonna happen? These folks go into survival mode. You know what I'm saying? So when you're lacking education, when you're lacking, you know what I'm saying, resources out here, what do you think they're gonna do? So that's the biggest issue. So you got to deal with that first before you have to deal with any kind of violence that you speak on.
So I think the conversation will certainly lead to some of the systemic inequalities that may be leading to some of this, but to something the district attorney said, this is something we're seeing in all neighborhoods. In October, on the 13th, off the Raleigh Greenway, there was a young man with a gun who shot and killed 5 people. Mayor Baldwin, I know that struck you. I talked to you in the hours after, in the days after. Define the problem of gun violence in this city, from East Raleigh to Southeast Raleigh to North Raleigh.
Recently went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where I sat on a panel addressing gun violence and mass shootings. They had asked me to participate because of the experience that we had in Raleigh. And I will tell you, it was hard to get through that conversation without crying, for me, but for most of the mayors in that room, because that's the biggest fear we have. And gun violence is the biggest topic that we talk about. Today in Nashville, we saw that. Somebody sent me a picture of this young girl sitting on a bus. She must have been about 10 years old, just in tears. You could see the trauma. And the fact is, gun violence is an issue throughout our country. Guns are too easy to get. We have not funded safe storage. We're not adequately funding mental health. And it's a combination of all of the above. It's the excess, it's, I think COVID and everything has had something to do with that. But there are things that we can do better, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about this evening.
Sheriff, we haven't heard from you yet. We've been talking a lot about what's happening in the city, but we know a lot of this kind of gun violence also plays out in the county. Citizens who live out there are victims. Just a few months ago, one of your deputies was shot and killed. How do you see this from a county perspective?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you to the host and to the sponsor for tonight, and thank each of you for being here. Your presence demonstrates your willingness to participate in the process of making Wake County and all of our communities safer. So I thank each of you for being here. I thank you for the opportunity to be your sheriff. And, whether it's in my capacity as sheriff, or a deacon in my church, head of Raleigh Interchurch Housing, dealing with affordable housing, homelessness, as a mentor to our youth, I walk the community and I see so many people suffering. What really concerns me is our youth are suffering in silence. And so when it reaches that point, they act out, reaching out for some type of help, and a lot of times it results in violence, results in criminal activity. We have to create more opportunities. We have to be there for them. We have to be a role model. And those are things we're focused on in the sheriff's office, how we can be a better partner, a better neighbor, to establish a presence within the community so that you know that we care, we understand, and we've got your best interests at heart. So we're deploying our resources in that manner out in the unincorporated areas, working with the municipalities, and trying to form that private, public, nonprofit, faith-based partnership. This is the way we bring education, awareness, but most of all, opportunities, so that our actions match our words, and we can end some of the suffering, so people don't feel like they're in a dead-end world, and there's hope and opportunity for them.
Thank you, Sheriff. 5 North Carolinians die per day from injuries by guns. Gun homicide right now is the leading cause of death for children between 15 and 17 years old. Brother Divine and the Chief, both of you have been to the Lighthouse, go to the Lighthouse, talking to young people, having these crucial conversations on smaller levels with young people who are in it right now, on the ground. What have, Brother Divine, let's start with you. What have you learned from those conversations on what young people are facing?
Well, actually attending the meetings, the community meetings at the Lighthouse hosted by Justice Serve is about bringing back the village that seemed to have been lost, not just in African-American communities, but all communities. There seems to be a deteriorating or declining of the village, you know. So there isn't a lot of hand washing or back washing going on, where there used to be like, well, you watch my house, I'll watch your house. Now, if it doesn't have anything to do with me, we want nothing to do with it. So there's a lot of divide going on. There's a lot of fear going on. And then I also recognize that if there are any programs to actually bring remedy to this, it's very far, few, and wide that anyone has any knowledge about it. So we could say, oh, we don't have resources, but a lot of the times it's that we have no knowledge of these resources. So that's pretty much what I see. So it's a lot of education that needs to happen, a lot of community meetings, a lot of people like the sheriff, chief of police, district attorney, a lot of people, you know, when they come out, you actually get boots on ground, firsthand experience instead of hearsay. You actually would, you know, actually be able to see it firsthand for yourself, to hear different sides of the problem that we think we have. So we feel like we have a community issue, but then there are some people that's in government that feel like it's just a problem. So their mind state approaching the issue that we're trying to solve is already sort of an aggravated one, if you will.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. You've been coming to these, going over to the Lighthouse for these conversations, which I know Diana's having, every Monday night. Young people in the community, some of them ex-gang members, trying to turn their lives around and do better. What have you taken away in your relatively short time here in this city?
Yeah, I absolutely commend Diane and all the groups. We have a lot of programming in our communities that is touching and working with our young people. The takeaway for me and what I'm struggling with is I don't know that we're touching the right youth, the right individuals, the kids who really need it the most. I would love to see people in the community, those who have a background like Mr. Divine and others that have been through the same kind of thing that the young people are dealing with now at those ages, that critical age from about 12 to 16 years old, where they're trying to find themselves, they're trying to define themselves, they're trying to find the right peer groups. If we could have people that is spending true quality time with these individuals, talking with them, being there, being present, doing whatever it takes, because those are the individuals we're losing. We do all this programming. We did our youth summit last year. We had over 100 youth from Raleigh come to that event. We gave them a lot of free stuff. They loved it. They were energized. They were good. But those aren't our problem children. Those are not the ones who are carrying guns. Those are not the ones who are in the streets and that kind of thing. We need to be able to find a way to really touch and work with those youth. I don't think that we're touching the right individuals right now.
Quincy, is the chief right, Quincy? How do we get to those young people slipping through the cracks?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is the chief right? How do we get to those young people slipping through the cracks?
Absolutely not. She's not right. And I said it because I've sat in meetings with the chief and some people on our force or whatever, and we sit here, we have these conversations, you know, we used to have them like every other week. But what the conversation that we have in those rooms don't coincide with what you're doing out in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it's going to start. So you have to show and prove what you're talking about.
Chief, we go back to you. There is Something I've seen in my 11 years here in Raleigh is a persistent lack of trust between Raleigh citizens, some Raleigh citizens, many Raleigh citizens, and its police force. What can you say to that?
I would say this. I've been doing this job, this kind of work for 27 years. In July, it'll be 27 years. I come from a community policing background. Came from Charlotte, where we're very engaged with the community when I was there. When I got to Raleigh, I said definitively that is something that I want to make sure this police department is doing. Raleigh Police Department had been doing that, building relationship with the community, but we have really, my goal is to make sure that we are connecting with the community. Are there times where we have missed the mark? Are there times where the relationship has not been good, where the trust has been broken? Certainly, I will admit to that. But every single day, we're trying to build those relationships. We're trying to work through it, and not just with our communities of colors, but all communities within in Raleigh. When I arrived here in Raleigh within a year, we had a LGBTQ plus liaison. Michael Baldwin is that person because I wanted to reach out to that community. It is important to me that we are connecting with every aspect of the community. Quentin, you talk about we're not doing what we're saying. I believe that's what I heard you say. That's unfortunate because I am determined to make sure that the conversations that we are having behind closed doors, the trust that we're trying to build, that continues and that's facilitated throughout our community. We're working every day to try to do that with our police officers. We have a lot of young officers that are coming on the force. Many of them are not from Raleigh. They're having to learn this community. They're having to learn more about it. But every single day, that is what we are doing to try to build the trust between the police and the community.
Go ahead.
And see, that's the very thing that I'm talking about.
What's that?
What she's saying is she tries to do everything she tries to, do within our community or whatever. But what she's doing, she's the head of her force out here. It's not coinciding with her officers that's on the street. So what are you really teaching your officers? So if you have that mindset and your officers have another mindset that are in the streets, it's not adding up. It's not adding up.
I think what a lot of this is getting at is something we heard, maybe many of us heard for the first time after what happened to Darrell Williams in January, and that's that term of proactive policing. It's a police strategy intended to prevent and reduce crime. It's a police strategy that's been top of mind since you mentioned it, Chief. In January, when Darrell Williams died in that altercation with Raleigh police officers outside of a shopping center on Rock Quarry Road, RPD told us the officers were on proactive patrols when they encountered Darrell Williams in a parked car. Not long after, the officers were trying to arrest Williams after they said they found a folded dollar bill in his pocket with a white powder on it and looked like cocaine. There's body cam video that shows Williams pulling away from officers. One officer uses his taser on him. He gets back up, he trips, he falls, he's tased twice. Twice more using the drive stun mode of the taser, giving a more powerful shock to his body. You can hear Williams on the body cam telling the officers, "I have heart problems," before he's tased a third time. Williams was arrested at 2 a.m. He quickly stopped breathing. Officers performed CPR there on the scene before an ambulance arrived. He was pronounced dead at Wake Med about an hour later. There was a significant amount of community concern about this, about why police were even there, why they were on Rock Quarry Road outside that shopping center, why this interaction had to happen. Critics say Williams was racially profiled. What do you say?
Well, I would say that proactive policing is what we have been doing in Raleigh and other police departments, other cities for many years. And proactive policing is a way, for one, to build trust with the community because the officers are visible in the area.
Please, audience.
Also, two, it is a way to decrease crime. We know that we have violent crime in this city. We have experienced violent crime, and we continue to experience violent crime in the city, particularly as it continues to grow. And then also to, again, an opportunity to build trust. We talk about proactive policing in Raleigh, and we are not just doing proactive policing because we just decide to do it. We're looking at the data. The data is driving this information of where we need to be and how we need to police. And when we look at the data, We find there's 5 particular areas in Raleigh that are problematic and that we have been focusing on for the time that I have been here. So 2 locations on New Bern Road, Capitol Boulevard, Idlewild, New Bern, Raleigh Boulevard area, and also to Glenwood South. Glenwood South is an area in this city that we have been doing proactive patrols since I arrived in September of 2021 because of the violence that we have seen down on Glenwood South. In fact, I brought the numbers to share with you. In 2022, we had 30 aggravated assaults in Glenwood South. We had 131 assaults in that area. That's why we are there. We're being driven by the data. When we look at New Bern Avenue, the 3600 block, 122 incidents last year, 6 murders, and that should not be okay with anybody that we have 6 murders in our community in one concentrated area, 73 aggravated assaults, 27 robberies from persons, 16 robberies from business. That is an area in our community where we are seeing crime and where the community has demanded that we be. I get emails all the time, I get phone calls all the time from citizens that says, we're seeing violence in our communities, but we don't see our officers. Where are the officers that our tax dollars are paying for? Why are they not in the areas where we're seeing the violent crime? So we are there. It's driven by the data. It's driven by the information and these repeated calls that the community is demanding that we be in those areas. The mayor sitting next to me when I arrived here said, what are you going to do about Glenwood South? People are getting shot. We have assaults going on. What are you going to do about that? That's why we dedicated officers to working every Friday and every Saturday night in Glenwood South, because we're seeing the crime and the violent crime that's occurring in that area.
Audience, please. Audience, please. I will read every question, every concern on the back of these cards. I promise you that. But we've invited this panel up here to speak, and I'd like to hear what they say. The audience watching at home would like to hear what they say.
We'd like to hear the truth.
Let's get to the truth.
Let's get to the truth. Was Daryl Williams violent?
Dawn, please.
But he's dead.
Chief, are you going to talk about the Daryl Williams? Are you going to talk about the Daryl Williams
Well,
case
you know that
specifically?
I can't. That is still under investigation. We know that the case is still under investigation, so I'm not at liberty to speak at it at this time.
Fair enough. Brother Divine. You raise your hand.
Is the microphone on?
It's on.
All right. Respectfully to both sides, there is more social decency and respect in gang meetings than in here tonight. I said social decency.
We can be civil tonight. We can do
Look.
We can do that tonight.
Hey, which one of y'all been shot at this week? Because I have. I mean, which one of y'all been shot at this week? Because I have. I'm here because I'm serious, man. And y'all, come on, man, have some respect. We gonna have that at the end, bro. Why you not up here? No, why you not up here? Why are you not up here? Why are you not up here? Why are you not up here? I would respect yours. Hey,
We're not doing anything. Everybody, calm down. Calm down. Let's take a break. Take a break. Everybody cool down. We need
Testing. Hello. Hold on. Okay. You will. Just hold on for a minute. Okay. Hey. Good people. Yeah, so we're going to have a conversation. We do. But let's do it. We can. Now, all I'm asking, right? We can. All I'm saying, Kerwin and Dawn, is that this is how we need to do it, right? We will, because that's the goal, right? The goal is to talk. The goal is to talk. The goal is to talk. But we can't have a conversation if everybody's yelling. We can't have a conversation. We've never had a conversation, a crucial conversation, without people being passionate. We understand your passion. We're just as passionate. So all we're saying, Dawn, all we're saying is give us our time. Give us the time. Give the community the time.
Okay. You have your violent interrupters. That's why we cannot move forward. That's exactly why we cannot move forward. Because we can't have a decent conversation. Quincy is one of ours. He's in agreement with you all. Well, I tell you this. Either you all leave or we're going to shut it down. Quincy is with you all. Okay, all right. We tried. No, it's out of control. No. The sheriff already said. This is my only chance. This is my only chance. This is my only chance. Shut it down. Yeah. Not a press off. This is my only chance. They are out of control. Okay, let's go. I can't have it. You gotta go. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we're good. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Now we know where we are, right? Now we know where we are.
Let them know this is not the time for protest. This is the time for discussion.
Yeah.
It was a great plan.
Okay. Y'all have a good night. Thank you. They don't want it. They don't want our community to get better. They want to go tear the city up. Testing. Testing.
I love you, sweetie. Praying for your strength, okay? It ain't over yet. Oh, no. It ain't over. The devil will not win. I told the pastor the y'all get y'all oil out, start pouring. I need a microphone.
Hold on, look like that. Can we ask him to turn it on?
It's on.
Oh,
Let's not talk loud, baby.
Excuse me, everyone. Excuse me, everyone. Excuse me, everyone. Everyone in this room, by the sound of my voice, can you turn that off? This needs to be private amongst our community. I'm sorry.